Today, we're going to take a deep dive into something we really haven't covered on the Hack by Age podcast, rheumatoid arthritis. And we're going to learn more about it from Indira Pulliadath, who had her own struggles with rheumatoid arthritis and actually changed her profession as a pharmaeconomics researcher to a nutritional therapy practitioner because of it. She also has a master's in pharmaceutical outcomes and policy, but with all the knowledge she had on pharmaceuticals, she still found that medication alone was not enough when her arthritis was so bad she could hardly function. So she started looking into healing diets, which worked so well, it motivated her to switch careers and move into the nutrition world. Indira has since wrote a great cookbook called AIP Indian Fusion, which has autoimmune protocol recipes inspired by Indian cuisine. You can also find her healthy recipes on her blog, cooktonourish.com, and I'll have links to all of Indira's information in the show notes. Before we begin, I have to read the fancy disclaimer. All the information discussed today is intended for informational purposes only. It is in no way intended nor implied to be a substitute for a professional medical advice. And if you are experiencing any type of symptoms or suffer from a medical condition, you got to seek a medical doctor and comply with treatment as prescribed. Consult with your healthcare provider before beginning any new diet, health program, or interventions. So now, without further ado, let's meet Indira Pulliadath. Welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure.
So let's start by sharing your personal experience and what happened to you and at what age and what are we talking about?
Yeah, that's a great question, right? When you said share about your personal experience, I was thinking, where should I start? But the major, like the life-changing experience that happened to me was at the age of 42. What happened was at that time, I was really a super busy career woman, really having a busy full-time job. I had my hands really full with 2 growing children. And my husband also had a traveling job, which meant that most of the time I had the children to myself, right? What fun. And I was literally on my toes from 6 a.m. in the morning till 11 p.m. at night and never thought that I was busy. It never even occurred to me that this lifestyle is, not good. It's not normal. Because I had the energy, I kept doing that. And so that's how I was, like one day.
One question just occurred to me. Was your mother like that?
So my mother, good question, by the way. My mother had a very opposite personality to me. She was a homemaker and housewife. However, she was also super busy in the sense that, she just cared for the family, was totally interested in cooking all the time and everything. And the other common thing was she had RA. She had rheumatoid arthritis and she was diagnosed. She was never diagnosed with RA, but she had all these symptoms right around in her 40s.
Interesting.
Yes. So that was a good question.
Sorry to interrupt you. Yeah, it just came.
No, that was really good. So what happened was, I was going along like this, and then suddenly one day, right, one fine day, I find that my wrist hurts a lot. It was like all of a sudden, like one day I was super healthy, jumping around, and then the next day I'm like, what happened? And then, went to the doctor. She gave me a painkiller. And a couple of days later, I was fine. But then 2 days later, it was another joint, like it was my shoulder. And what was interesting was that it was just the very slightest minimal thing would trigger that pain episode. For example, for my shoulder, I had like a very small handbag, that I would put on my shoulder and walk about 5 minutes from the parking lot at work to my desk. And just the 5-minute walk with that bag caused my shoulder to go into a flare. And what we're talking about is like intense, excruciating pain that you feel that you're going to die, So that started happening. And all of a sudden, I'm like thinking, what is wrong, right? What is this? So basically, this kept happening for a period of 3 months. And it was only after a period of 3 months, going to multiple doctors, that I finally was diagnosed with rheumatoid arthritis. So when I finally got the diagnosis of RA, I was like, in a sense, relieved, because I was like wondering, what is this like illness that that I don't even know what it is. But at least I knew. I was very positive. The doctors prescribed me medications, and being, having like the pharmacy background, I knew about medications, and I knew that there were medications to help RA. So I was like very hopeful, and I'm like, yeah, I'm going to be fine. I'll be put on medications. I was very receptive to them. I was put on those medications, and I thought everything is going to be hunky-dory from there, right? But not. It was the opposite. The medications helped me like maybe about 50%, I would say, like they help reduce the flares, but they were still happening, and the intensity of the flares was still the same. So whenever they happened, it was like really painful, right? So it was still there. And then on top of that, these medications started giving me side effects. They started giving me all these horrible side effects that at one time I was on the floor with abdominal pain. And then my husband had to call the ambulance to rush me to the hospital, right? So
Wow.
these kind of things are like so scary. Even though I, have a pharmacy background, I know that medications can cause side effects, right? Potential things like this, like abdominal cramps. But when you actually end up experiencing that and going to the emergency room, you are like so nervous taking it again, right? You're like, oh my God, like what is this doing to me, right? So nervous. But despite that, I kept persevering. My doctor changed my medication, and we tried a couple different things, but it was still there. And at that point, I was getting like really frustrated. I tried a lot of alternative therapies, and it was a period, it didn't happen overnight. It was a period of time, like maybe around 2 years, I would say, that when I finally was able to try the AIP, or the elimination diet, that helped me. And that's when I saw improvement in my symptom. And I saw that, things were helping me. So
Wow.
that was like that whole life-changing experience for me.
And what other therapies were you doing? And just out of curiosity, we all try so much when we're having some issues. And did any of them work
That's
or help?
another excellent question, because I did try, I like to say that I tried pretty much everything under the sun, right? Because you're also so gullible at that point. You're so desperate to get better. You just, hear about something and you latch on to it, and you're like, okay, this is going to make me feel better. I'm going to do it. So I did try a lot of those kind of things. And I don't want to name names of the programs, because, just it might help other people. But there were a few different, things that I tried, including juicing, or like the vegan diet, and even just kind of went gluten-free, dairy-free, tried different components of diet things also, like eating certain foods, and things like that. But nothing really made a dent in, what I was having in my pain and inflammation. It was, it just kept happening. The pain flares kept happening. And then I also tried Ayurveda. I don't know if you're aware of Ayurveda. It's an ancient Indian form of medicine. So, I have a lot of family back home in India. And so they were telling me that, you should try Ayurveda, because it can help a lot of chronic diseases. And I was like, okay, I will do that. So at one point, I had also had to go on disability from work, because, these pain flares were so bad. And after a period of like 6 months, despite being on medications, my pain, like a lot of my joints were like permanently kind of in flare, so my knees were like hurting so badly. I had trouble like walking up the stairs in my home itself, even like, taking small movements, just walking was like hard for me, so I was like
Wow.
really badly disabled. So that at that time when I was on disability, I thought, let me take advantage of this, that I'm off work, and I'll just go to this place to this doctor in India. And I did like 1 month of treatment with him, Ayurvedic, following everything that they suggested, including the diet, etc. But unfortunately, that didn't work for me. It did not work for me. And actually, sadly, it actually made my inflammation get worse, So I came back like really badly inflamed. And I'm like, okay, what do I do next, right? And another point I want to mention here, which, many people with RA go through, is more than the physical pain, right? Physical pain is something that you do experience and you're like, okay, over time, you get like increasingly tolerant to it to some extent. But then the mental frustration, the mental anguish that you go through is like nothing that you want to ever to experience, because you just feel so alone, you just feel so alone. Like I knew my husband was very supportive, my children were very young at that time, but it just pained me so much that I can't be like part of normal activities anymore. And so I was dealing with a lot there with all that happening. And for me, the other life-changing thing at that time was, before I started the diet, was I also started praying a lot. And one of my close friends introduced me to that. And she saw that I was like mentally very frustrated. I was kind of heading into, the depression mode. And she wanted to prevent me from going there. So she said that, would you be open to doing prayer? And that, Zora, was one thing that helped me tremendously, because, it was like I needed that kind of some spiritual connection to feel that positivity, because I felt like I had tried everything and nothing is working. And why is all this thing happening to me? And, you kind of go into that cycle. So that prayer really helped me. And that then slowly I started regaining my positivity back. And then from out of the blue, from nowhere, like as if like a miracle, I met with this naturopath who suggested the AIP diet for me. So I still think that, that happened, that turn of events really was what helped me, And finally, I was introduced to the AIP. And because if I had been introduced to the AIP early on, maybe I would not have been as receptive. Now I was in a better frame of mind as well to be able to implement that. So, and I dove into it right away. And that is what, actually helped me. So it was like really a combination of things that helped me.
I'm really interested in hearing. This is amazing, actually. It's the mind-body connection, right? You would think, oh, prayer, well, that's not a physical thing. How can that help me? And it's fascinating to see that work. Did you pray before? Was that part of your life and lifestyle, or was that something totally new to you?
So I was born and raised a Hindu. I was born in India and always raised a Hindu. One thing about Hinduism is that you can pray, you can be very religious, or you can be in the middle, or you can just be minimal. There's no like hard and fast rule. People choose their own convenient space.
Like an
And the way
as-needed basis?
as needed basis. Yeah, I think that's accurately put. So that's how I was, because I was young, right, when I left home. And at that time, you don't really feel the need, because you think when you're young, you think everything is so, sweet, everything is fine, you don't need to worry about anything. But then and then I would say I was in the middle. I always fell into the middle bracket. Like, so when there was some religious days and stuff, then I would do the prayer, but I wouldn't like do it on a daily basis. But I always had faith, and that's important. I always had faith in God. But then what happened was, after I got diagnosed with RA, I actually, I started feeling negative, and I started feeling like, why, if there was God, why would he do this to me, right? So I started asking those kind of questions. And so I kind of then went away from praying. I did not, I moved away from it. It was like I don't know how to describe that. It was almost like I was, harboring like really sad feelings. And I was like, I'm not in the mood to pray anymore,
Mm.
So then the friend who suggested prayer to me, she is a Christian and she reads the Bible. And so she asked me if I was open to reading the Bible, and I was really open to reading it because I knew that I needed something and it would be in English. So that actually was another factor that motivated me, because I wanted to understand what I was reading and what those things meant. And, it's like kind of feeling some connection. And so that's why I was open to it. And now I'm proud to say that I'm like open towards all religions. It's not like one religion over the other. I'm just like, I just feel that we all need to find a way that you can connect with the higher power, and so that process just helped me connect with that power, and it just kind of anchored me.
How long were you praying for, or how long did it take until you actually felt an impact? And not only how many days, but how often and how many hours or minutes?
So that's also a very good question. And the impact was really very fast. I would say in about a week, I started feeling positive. And initially when we started, we were doing it like twice a week. But, she had also sent me like the other books that there were like verses and hymns that I could just like, browse through and read whenever I felt like reading it. And they were just like inspiring, those quotes. So I would just browse through them even, the rest of the week. But we prayed like for twice a week. And within a week, I could feel like mentally, I just could feel the difference. I suddenly, like, I don't know, just like my whole perspective changed and I felt really positive. Like from where I was, in the pits, I felt like there was no way out of this thing, right? To feeling that, oh, I can fight this. I'm ready, So
Wow, that's like better than a Tony Robbins conference, and faster and more impactful. That, I mean, I really, I know we're going to talk about nutrition and all that, but I didn't expect the spiritual side, but I find it fascinating and how impactful and how fast it worked for you. And did it eliminate like 50% of the pain, or was that just sort of the trajectory that just said, okay, now I'm going to be positive and keep looking to get the final 20% or whatever? How much of an impact did it make?
Yes, so the impact was mainly mental. Okay, so it's not like my pain flares also magically disappeared or anything. It was like, the mental thing that I felt that, okay, I still have the pain. I'm still suffering with RA. I still need to find solutions, right? I have a long way to go. But I felt like I had that energy and determination to go that route and find, continue to, find alternative treatments or something that's going to help me. And I also got that feeling that I will find the path. Because see, you get frustrated when you feel like you don't know whether you're going to succeed or not, right? So somehow that prayer made me feel that there is going to be an end to my misery. I got that. I just don't know how, but I just got that in me that it is going to come. So, and that's why I was more open to like, continuing that path.
That's an important aspect, and I appreciate that answer. So then what happened next? Because it's like, it just really sounded like that's just supercharged your mission to really find the solution for this. As I know how it can be to just wallow in self-pity and pain, and it just is downward spiral towards depression. And I'm a gerontologist, and we study older adults and pain and fractures and falls and how it really can get out of control, and just because of pain. That's like a physical pain. So it's really great that you got this mindset. Then what happened? What was the turning point in your life that made you actually change careers for this?
Right. So that was definitely another turning point, right? So what happened, as I told you, like once I started implementing the AIP diet, And again, I entered doing the AIP diet in a very receptive frame of mind. I was like, somehow, I don't know how, Zora, but that prayer just helped me to think that this is now going to work for me. I just, and the science was also there, but so the naturopath who introduced the AIP diet to me pointed me towards Dr. Sarah's website, the paleomom.com, the autoimmunewellness.com, both of which have like tons of the science behind the AIP diet. There's a lot of science there. And being of science background, like and always worked as a researcher too. So that was, I just saw all this information. I went reading through all of this, and that continued to make me feel hopeful that there is a science behind this can help, right? And then I just dove into it 100%. And the diet, actually, within a month, I started feeling better. Like my pain flares reduced, within a month. And I was still taking medications, It's not like I had changed anything in the medication. That part was the same. But just adding the diet actually helped. And so much that, just before I had started this diet, and where I was like really bad, my inflammation was high, my rheumatologist wanted me to go on the next level of medication, which are the biologicals, the injectables, like the Humira, Enbrel. But he was thinking that my RA was so severe that he actually even wanted me to skip the Humira and Enbrel and go right away to the Rituxan, which is like the IV infusion. And he was like, you need to go there because your inflammation is really high. And then I requested him, can we wait for a couple months, because I'm just just started this diet. And he's a nice man, but he looked at me and I could see that he did not really believe that the diet is going to do anything. And he was like skeptical, but he was like, okay, if you want to, but he's like, yeah, but after 2 months, and he said that every month we'll continue to monitor your blood work. Now, that was a good thing, because what happened was every month, not only did I feel better physically, but my blood work also showed that I kept getting better. So that really surprised my rheumatologist, So he knew that nothing had changed with medication. And then every month I went to visit him, my blood markers were lower and lower. And then at the end of the 3rd month, my inflammation was in the normal range. Markers were in the normal range. And I felt like completely pain-free at that point. So he looked at me and he said, like, whatever it is that you are doing, keep doing that, because it is working.
Did he not ask a little deeper, like, what are you doing?
Yeah, no, he did. So he is
good.
actually a big supporter of me now. So on my website, Rheumatoid Strong, he has given me a testimonial, because not only did he see me improving, but after I became a nutritional therapist, and then he even refers his patients to me now, because he know that this works. So so it's almost like I changed a skeptic doctor to a more positive one, because he just saw it. You can't deny it.
That's great, because I just spoke to somebody else about just another story of some life-changing transformation. I don't remember what. And she said, no, her doctor was not interested whatsoever what she did. And I hear so many stories like that. So it's so refreshing to hear today you say that your doctor was actually curious and now is supporting you and his patients, referring them to you so that they can get better. I mean, that's what I would expect from a doctor. Yes. If you can't help people, because I bet he was very frustrated with all the medication giving to you, and it just was getting worse and worse. Like, wouldn't that make any doctor upset and go, okay, let's find something else? But wonderful story. Thank you.
Yeah, sorry. And I didn't complete the part as to why finally I decided, right? So I saw this, and then until then, I was on disability leave. And then when I started to get better, I decided to resume work, right? So I went back to work, and within a month, I started noticing, like my health had been improving. And then after I started work, I started seeing those pain flares popping in randomly here and there. And then I started correlating them to things at work, like the timelines, if I had a deadline, or if I had like a stressful work situation that was triggering some flares. And so that's when I decided to take a step back and really reevaluate, rethink what I wanted to do. I definitely wanted to go all the way there and become like 100% better, right? And I knew that I had to do, like by then, I had started reading up a lot, and I knew that it was not just the diet, but that the lifestyle, that was an important aspect to it too. And then just doing the AIP to Zora is initially not easy, because you have to do the diet. I had to make like cook normal diet, right, for my rest of my family, and then to cook the AIP diet for myself. So there was a lot of work. And so looking at all that and then seeing that the work was actually kind of an impediment to my progress, I just decided at that time, I said that I'm going to take a break from work, right? So that is what I thought I was doing, that I was quitting my job. I quit my job, but I thought I'll basically take a break for 1 year and then either go back to the same job if they would take me, or maybe, something similar, right? But my focus at that point was to just take care of myself for a year. And that is what I did. But while I was doing that 1 year, I started getting more and more pulled into nutritional therapy and functional medicine. I took a ton of, all the free webinars that I could find. A lot of, started following all these people like Dr. Mark Hyman, Chris Kresser, attending all their podcasts. And then I just started getting fascinated by that science. And then I said, like, when I want to go back to work, I really want to now do something that can help people, that can help somebody. Because what was the point in going back to a corporate job where I'm just doing a bunch of analytics, I'm doing stuff, and I really don't know who benefits from that work, at the end of the day. So that's like my whole perspective had changed. And I really wanted to do something that at the end of the day would, help somebody. So then that's when I decided that I wanted to study and become a nutritional therapy. At least I would have a base qualification in that area, and then continue to grow in that area, once I do that. So that's when I enrolled into the NTA's NTP program.
That's the nutritional therapist program.
Yes.
Nutritional therapy practitioner program. So let's explain a little bit about the AIP diet, the Autoimmune Protocol diet, I guess. And let's explain what is autoimmune disease in a brief way, and what is the AIP diet, and why did that was you were recommended to try this. So let's explain a little bit, what is it that you did in terms of nutrition?
Yeah, absolutely. So autoimmune disease is basically what happens in your body when your immune system gets confused, very simplistically put. So normally the immune system's function is to attack any foreign cells, right? Like say, for example, there's an infection by a bacteria or a virus. It's supposed to attack those cells, kill them so that the body is safe. But when a person develops autoimmune disease, that immune cells, something happens in their functionality that changes, that they now start attacking body's own cells too. They're just, so that's why I like to say that they're just confused, right? Mostly that happens when they are overworked, so the immune system, when they are overworked, they get confused, and then they start attacking the body's joints. And depending upon what part of the body they start attacking, that's the disease you get. For example, for RA, they start attacking the body's joints, and that's when people have RA. When they start attacking skin cells, then people get psoriasis, and so on and so forth. There are thyroid, right? That's your thyroid, Hashimoto's, when they attack the thyroid gland, etc. So that's in a nutshell what autoimmune disease is. And the AIP protocol, and to explain a little bit further in terms of what now we know happens when to trigger this, that autoimmunity, is that over a period of time, when your gut health is poor, and when and there could be a lot of underlying causes that also could contribute to poor gut health. In addition to poor diet, there could also be lifestyle things that can actually, like if you are extremely stressed, you've gone through an extremely stressful situation, lack of sleep, exposure to toxins, chemicals, etc., those can also impair your gut health. And then that term, what we call is leaky gut. When your gut becomes leaky, then this causes your immune system to become abnormal. And that is because your immune system, about 70 to 80% of your immune system is closely attached to your intestine. It just it sits right outside your small intestine. And that's a part that not many people know. But once they understand that important part, they can see that correlation between gut health and immune function. Right. So for me, that was like the aha moment, in all my research, when I realized that, okay, that is why what I eat matters, because when your gut becomes leaky, certain foods can leak out of that space, in your small intestine, and then they directly come across, the immune cells come across those the food particles, and that triggers an immune response. And so that's how autoimmunity happens. So the AIP diet, or it's also called as elimination diet, but the AIP diet is a little bit more precise than elimination diets that were there in the past. But what the concept is to avoid all potential inflammatory foods, so some of those foods are grains. It's not just gluten, but all grains, all grains, all legumes, even certain healthy foods like dairy, eggs, nuts. And then an important category is nightshades, which are your tomatoes, eggplant, and potatoes, right? So and then also like white sugar, soy, etc. So you avoid all this list of inflammatory foods, so that, that response that I was saying that happens, the reaction that happens when these substances go against the immune system and it triggers that flare, right? So we are trying to avoid that. So when you avoid all these things and also eat a lot of healthy foods, the AIP is also about eating healthy foods. Like you have to eat a lot of vegetables. You have to eat nutrient-dense foods like organ meats, if possible, bone broth, all those healing foods. And so it's like on one hand, you're avoiding inflammatory foods. On the other hand, you're giving nutrient-dense foods to heal your gut. And that is what you're doing to help heal that leaky gut, so that your immune system is not that triggered and doesn't give you the flares, right? So that is in a nutshell what the AIP does. And it is considered to, start doing this, and as soon as your symptoms improve a little bit, you can start to reintroduce some of the foods back, not all, right? Like you can add processed foods back, you can add the white sugar stuff back, you can add gluten back, but some of the other healthy foods, for example, legumes are healthy in general, eggs and nuts are healthy, dairy also can be healthy. So, but you have to do it one at a time, so that you can then gauge whether your body is still reacting to it or not. So it's kind of like a process.
You said that it took you about a month before you started to feel pain-free. Or if I understand you correctly, was that about a month?
Yeah, month when I actually started noticing the reduction in my pain. And then at the end of 3 months, I felt completely better.
So then what were you actually, explain the diet itself? You took out all this inflammatory or those possible trigger foods for how long, and then reintroducing them one by one? Like how often would you reintroduce one and wait a few days and then bring the next one, or how did that work?
So the first 3 months, I did it 100% AIP. So I was in elimination phase. I started feeling better after 1 month, but I just wanted to keep going because I was feeling good, right? So, and by then, after 1 month, actually 1 month is the hardest, the first month. And then you get used to the diet and you realize that there are a lot of options. It's not like you are deprived, right? So I started getting comfortable and I wanted to give it more try. I wanted to continue the healing. So I continued with 3 months, and then after 3 months is when I started the reintroduction process. And the reintroduction process continues even now. It's like 5-6 years now since I first started the AIP, but there are some foods that I still can't handle. I'm like extremely sensitive to almonds, eggs, and over the last several years, I've tried introducing them. Some foods I've successfully reintroduced. I've successfully reintroduced other nuts like walnuts and cashew nuts, etc. But so the food sensitivities are again different for different people. That's another important thing. For me, I've been able to introduce a lot of foods like rice. Also, I'm able to reintroduce now, but I try to limit them because I know that these foods have the potential to be inflammatory. So I, like grains, for example. So I don't eat a lot of it.
It is a journey, actually, and I know people who've done this as well. And after a while, they do find, even though they were very sensitive to, say, almonds, they find that maybe after a while they can eat, 3 or 6, but not a whole handful or not more than that. And so in the beginning, these elimination diets feel like a death sentence because you're like, I can't eat this. And you don't look at all the stuff that you can actually eat because you're just not used to it. But when you do get used to it, you realize, oh, okay, it's not that bad. But after a while, yeah, it is interesting. I think I'll share my story a little bit later, but I know that when you're feeling so good with an elimination diet, there's probably a psychological impact of fear of ever eating that almond again, or because it's going to bring you pain, or possibly, right? That's why the experimenting, bringing it back in, is probably a little bit of a scary moment now.
It is. You're absolutely right. And I'm probably guilty of that too. Like some of the things like eggs, the first time I tried to reintroduce eggs, I got a big pain flare. So much that it actually discouraged me from, like trying. I just like, I'm so nervous, and I tell myself that I'm okay without eggs. Like I don't really miss it, but as a nutritional therapist and a coach, like I really encourage everybody to keep trying, because it would be good to keep adding more foods to your universe of acceptable foods, because variety is always good, to help that gut flora. But you're absolutely right. There is a psychological component to it that you have to overcome.
So the diet made the biggest impact. It sounded like the prayer was the trajectory to put you in the right mindset, because you do have to be in the mindset for that. And then the diet, and you said you have a science background, and there is a lot of research with the AIP diet, like with so many other diets. There's always lots of research, but I think you explained it pretty well why that made such a big impact, because of the leaky gut, of the stuff leaking into the bloodstream, and your body thinks it's an invader, attacks it, and then it manifests somewhere else. Is it possible that people have gut issues or leaky gut, but don't know it? Because usually people have gas and bloating, constipation. Can it happen without knowing?
Yeah, it is absolutely possible, and in this modern age and world, I think I won't be surprised if pretty much everybody has some form of leaky gut, because as I said, it's not just the bad diet, but it is also the stress, because the abnormal cortisol levels can actually also cause a leaky gut. Lack of sleep can also cause leaky gut, exposure to toxins and chemicals. And we are all, right, the air is not as pure as it used to be, right, 100 years ago. So considering all that factor, I think we all need to take steps. Even if you don't have active autoimmune symptoms yet, we need to take steps to really continue to improve our gut health, by eating nutrient-dense foods, by taking measures to reduce stress in our life, to make sure that you sleep well, and then taking measures to detox periodically, so that you can detox from, all the chemicals that we are, exposed to.
How do you recommend detoxing?
So one of the biggest ways you can do detoxing is by just eating a lot of nutrient dense, like greens, leafy greens, and cruciferous vegetables, because what they do is they naturally support our liver. The job of our liver is to detox. And the more nutrition you give to your liver, it will be able to do its job better. That's one way. The second way is to make sure you keep all your pathways open, excretory pathways, by drinking enough water, right? Keeping yourself hydrated so that your cells are hydrated, and then, you're making your kidneys excrete in a proper way so they can detox efficiently. Make sure eating healthy will also make sure that you're not constipated, so that your bowels are moving, right? So all those things will help you detox. And then exercising regularly or doing like a sauna also is very good, because that helps you sweat out, and that sweat can excrete out toxins as well. There are also certain, some people will do infrared sauna, and those are also good. But they all have an expense to it. So that's why I wanted to just say, what are some things that you can just do on a day-to-day basis without even investing in anything else, and yeah, exercise is also definitely, I highly recommend that.
With exercise, is walking and yoga fine, even if you don't sweat? Or do you need to sweat?
Yeah, for having that detox effect, definitely, some kind of sweating is recommended. Some kind of exercise that can induce sweat is recommended. However, yoga and walking are also some things that I highly recommend for two reasons. One, for that they are calming qualities, right? They just calm you. And we talked about mindset and how that mind-body connection. So those kind of gentle exercise help in calming your body, helping in calming your like cortisol down. If you like stressed, etc., that will help balance your hormones. So from that perspective, it is good. And then also for people who have RA and joint damage or joint stiffness, etc., yoga is something that I highly recommend, and even gentle walking, because those helps keep the joints moving, and that helps to reduce the stiffness.
Is rheumatoid arthritis reversible?
Not to the best of my knowledge, unfortunately, because once you have RA and you test positive for RA, it's always going to be there in your system. I know I have like randomly come across, YouTube videos of some people who say that they got RA and then they did like a bunch of things, like treatments, and now they are free from RA. But I have not actually come across any real person, and I have not seen any, scientific literature on that yet. What can happen is, and that's true with any autoimmune disease too, once you have the autoimmune disease, it just stays, you are positive with that. But the thing about the symptoms, it's possible to manage your symptoms so that the disease can kind of go into remission, where you don't have like an active form of the disease. You can keep it under control. So that is what I have seen. Now, RA2 can manifest itself in a bunch of different ways. For some people, early on, they have like the positive indicator for it in blood work, but they may not have any active symptoms. I have had, clients like that come to me where they are just nervous that their, symptoms are positive. I mean, their test is positive, but they don't have active symptoms. And I just advise them to do the diet and lifestyle that can help keep that leaky gut at bay and not really, translate into painful symptoms, right? So they don't need to be on medication, and they have been able to stay that way. But I also recommend that they continue to monitor their blood work regularly, to test for inflammation, because with RA, the other bad part about it is it is not just a disease of the joints, it's also a systemic disease. So it can also attack your organs, like it can attack heart, lungs, kidneys, etc. And that is why one of the things, like if anybody has even mild to moderate symptoms, and with diet they're feeling better, by the dietary changes and the lifestyle, they're feeling better, I still recommend that they be on some form of medication, even if it is low dose medication, I highly recommend that. And that is another thing about my approach, my integrative approach, that my rheumatologist likes. I just don't tell people to do this diet and lifestyle and then go off medication. That should not be their goal. Of course, reducing the stronger medications or avoiding the biologicals can be a goal, right? Which was my goal too. And also potentially lowering the dose of your oral medications, that can be a goal, but not like completely going off of medications, because I feel like that's not very good advice, because it can cause systemically, it can still, continue to brew inside your body and cause other damage, and you don't want that.
Are you still taking medication?
Yes, I am. And I was able to not only avoid that the infusion that he wanted me to, so 6 years, and I have still not had to go that route. And then whatever medication, I'm on a combination medication of methotrexate and hydroxychloroquine. And I was able to reduce the dose of those medications too, from where I was when I started the diet.
That's amazing. So I'm wondering about, it seems as though the triggers here, you mentioned stress as being some of the root causes of this, the diet as well, causing the leaky gut and then triggering this. And I'm thinking of all these people in the world who are majorly stressed, or you think of the war in Ukraine, you can imagine the impact that's having. There are a lot of people who are stressed and they don't get RA or they don't get hypothyroid. Why not? Or what's happening there? What's the difference between those people and the others who get some kind of an arthritis or other disease for that matter?
That's a great question, right? So the third factor to all this is one thing that we didn't discuss, and that's genes, or how our genes they make our cells respond to certain things, right? So that third component is the genetic thing. So in some people, maybe their genes are really good, that even the external environment thing and the diet and the lifestyle, even though those are bad, their genes are very good, that it kind of prevents them from turning on or off depending upon whatever is happening there, right? So that could be that, or they could be having like they even if they don't know, but they are taking some measures that they know. Like some people, even in stressful situation, they can take the stress, but they have a way to not let that affect them. It's like that's my husband.
That's a superpower.
So yeah, but you have a great point there. I don't have the complete answer to that, but that's what I think, that the genetic component may be what is. And I would be curious to know if you have any other thoughts around that.
Yes, no, I do. It's always a question, because we always throw around, since the mapping of the human genome, your genes are the loaded gun and the lifestyle is the trigger. So those genes are about 20% of your destiny to, your predispositions to get a certain diseases, but 80% we can control with lifestyle. Some people say 90-10, but it's actually really surprising when I first heard that, because my mother died of cancer and I was like, oh my God, I'm going to die of cancer too young. And then this came out and I'm like, woof, wow, I feel like I control a lot. But then you hear those people who do have the healthy diet and lifestyle and they do get these diseases, and you're thinking, wow, well, and then very often it's contributed, well, they had this predisposition. This is, their genes. And you're like, so if genes are only 20%, that 20% can be pretty impactful and pretty strong. So it is, it doesn't mean that just because you're dealt, you won the lottery and the genes, you can just go woohoo and do whatever you want, because those
Right.
people can also, have something, and vice versa. Just because you got a bad set of cards, well, it's not exactly your full destiny. We don't know, but that's just what I've been observing through my life and through what I've been learning. And, it's still, I think we do need to pay attention to our diet lifestyle, no matter what kind of genes you have, and not to be doomed or feel upset. I think people should get their DNA tested, or their genes tested, and see what they are, so that They're just aware, and it doesn't mean anything. I mean, it means that you have a predisposition, but it's not 100% you're going to get this whatever disease that you have a predisposition to. So that's my opinion.
Yeah, that's a great point. And I'm sorry to hear that, your mom died of cancer. So my mother, who I told you about, RA, right? So she had end stage renal disease, and she passed away like 15 years ago at age 59. So for me too, it's always there in the back of my mind that I have RA too. And, my mother got kidney disease from it. So am I going to get kidney disease from it? Right. But then I tell myself, I am doing all the things that I can do, that I'm aware of, right? I'm doing everything possibly that I can do at this point with the diet and the lifestyle, things that my mother didn't, those tools my mother didn't have at her disposition. So I feel like I am better off. And then at the end of the day, whatever happens, happens, but I am doing my best, right?
Yeah.
So at least, but I totally get your point, and that's a very good point, what you raised.
I have the same mindset, and I always say, well, I just do whatever I can, and you do your best. You do everything that you know and you're aware of. And if I get some disease, I'm guilt-free. I'm not going to go, oh, I should have, changed my diet, or I should have, paid more attention to my lifestyle, and I would see my grandkids grow up and live with that guilt and die with that guilt. I don't have that guilt.
Exactly.
I'm free of that. And whatever happens, not my fault.
That's how I feel too. Absolutely.
So I wanted to ask you then, how we're going to put the woman going through this post-menopausal transition, right? Hormones are fluctuating like crazy and everything. How is there any connection between rheumatoid arthritis and menopause?
I definitely think there is a connection, because if you see the onset of RA, right, the biggest category of people who get diagnosed with RA is women between age 40 to 50, or 40 to 45 rather. And that is the age of perimenopause, right? When perimenopause sets in. So I definitely think there is some correlation between perimenopause and the hormone levels going low and the triggering of autoimmunity. And I saw that with myself too. As I told you, like at age 42 is when I was diagnosed. And all that symptoms that I described, like all of a sudden I started getting the pain symptoms. And right around that time was when I was experiencing, for the first time in my life ever, started experiencing changes in my menstruation cycle. Like the perimenopause started happening right around that time. So I definitely think there's a correlation. And we know now, right, that the hormone levels impact the immune function, and the hormone levels are closely related. Like people who have COVID vaccine, right, they miss a period, and their periods are delayed, etc. So clearly there is a correlation between your immune function and hormone. The exact details I don't know, but I do think that there is a correlation. I'm thinking that essentially what it does is that the imbalance in hormones has an impact indirectly on your gut health, and then inadvertently it leads to leaky gut, something like that. For me personally, I think it was a combination of the perimenopause, and another thing had happened at that time. Right around the time, just before I was diagnosed, I got a viral infection, which was pretty bad. And I think that combination of that viral infection, the perimenopause, and around that time, right around that time frame, I was actually doing a lot of physical strenuous work because I was practicing for a dance recital. I was taking some dance lessons at that time, and we had a dance recital coming up, and I was like dancing, and so that was like heavy dancing. So I feel like the combination of those three things is what triggered autoimmunity in me.
Super interesting. Yeah. When we reflect on things, once we have certain knowledge, we can go, perhaps it's combination and genes and environment. This is what I learned in gerontology. And when I got my master's, it was basically, genes plus environment, and then there's a trigger. And going back, it's just, I would love for you to share a little bit with women now. What would you recommend a woman going through this menopause transition do to protect her health, whether she has rheumatoid arthritis. Maybe, I don't know if there's different protocols for her or for somebody who doesn't.
Yeah, that's a great question. And it is especially relevant, right? As I said, because a lot of the women who are diagnosed with RA are kind of currently also going through perimenopause. And, it's almost like, and people who have RA or any autoimmune disease also seem to have worse menopausal symptoms. And one of the reasons for that could be like because their adrenals are already fatigued. Right? When you have autoimmune disease, your adrenal glands are fatigued, and that's one of the reasons why you also get, autoimmune disease. So when that is when menopause or perimenopause sets in, what happens is, your ovaries stop manufacturing your female hormones, but they are handing the baton to adrenal glands, and they are supposed to take over. But if your adrenal glands are already compromised, like an RA or autoimmune disease, then they are not able to take over. And that is why, people with RA or people with autoimmune really have really horrible perimenopause and menopause symptoms. And I did too. So what my advice to them is, if they already have RA, I would again recommend, right, they try the AIP diet and continue to eat. If they cannot do the elimination, at least continue to eat healthy, nutrient-dense foods, right? Lots of vegetables, lots of green leafy vegetables, lots of cruciferous vegetables, and then also good fats like, your avocados, olive oil, olives, and, all the nuts, etc. You can try, right? All the good fats, because those are the building blocks for your hormones. You need to eat those good fats too to synthesize hormones. And then also, what I would recommend is take certain steps to lifestyle measures to reduce the stress in your life. Because as I said, adrenal glands, right? Stress has an impact on the adrenal glands. And if they are fatigued, then you're not going to be able to produce those hormones. So start by taking the dietary and lifestyle changes. Try to really reduce stress in your life, or do stress relief measures, do yoga, mindfulness, meditation. That's, really helpful. And if those steps help you to kind of reduce your symptoms, that's great. But sometimes those are not enough. They were not enough for me. And, they helped me through perimenopause. But then when menopause started hitting me last year, my levels really tanked. My estrogen dropped to like 10. And I had like crazy vertigo and, basically dizziness all the time. That I talked to my OBGYN. I had also read about hormone replacement therapy. Before that, I had attended a webinar. So I knew that hormonal replacement therapy, now there is new data, new research that says that it is not really, it's really safe for you. It does not really have the adverse effects that it was purported to have before, because of that flawed study that was done years ago. So I was more receptive to it, and my OBGYN herself recommended that I be on it, considering my really low hormone levels, and I was happy to be on it. And that helped me tremendously. And these hormones also have a protective effect on the body. They help your heart, they help your brain, they help your bones. So I am really happy to be on it, and it really helps me. But that doesn't necessarily mean that every single woman who is going through menopause needs to be on it. It depends on how your body is able to handle it, so it depends on what kind of symptoms you have. And I really advocate for testing for hormone levels, because that's when you really know where you stand and whether, hormonal therapy is needed for you or not, or just diet and lifestyle might be enough for you.
What kind of testing would you recommend? Blood, serum, or urine?
Yeah, blood
saliva?
testing, regular blood testing for all the your female hormones, primarily estrogen and progesterone at least, because the levels of those will give you an idea of how low they go. And your practitioner might want to test at different times of your cycle too, to kind of see how what the levels are throughout your cycle. But definitely, testing is like for the first step.
So we're gone over 3 minutes. I'm wondering, do you have a little bit more time, or how much time do you have left?
I can definitely do like 5 minutes, maybe more.
Okay, so we got 5 minutes. I want you to share a little bit about your blog, your cookbook, and the programs that you have.
Sure. Yeah, thank you. So when I started the AIP, I started writing up my AIP recipes on my blog, which is called cook2nourish.com, which is cook, the number 2, nourish.com. So you find recipes there. I also have a YouTube channel with the same name, Cook to Nourish. And there I do both. I share my recipes as well as I share nutritional advice there. So if you can follow me there, you'll get all my latest videos. And then I recently launched a new website called as rheumatoidstrong.com. And that is essentially focused on helping women with RE. So I write blog posts, and there's a ton of, there's information about my story there and also about my programs. So I have a program, Rheumatoid Strong, which is an online course where anybody can just, purchase that course and then do it at their own pace. It's kind of a self-paced course. And then I also offer a Rheumatoid Strong Plus program, which is a coaching program, where in addition to having that course, you get real support, so you will be in a part of a community of other people with women with RA. And there'll be weekly live calls with me. And then you also get a one-on-one nutritional consultation with me. So I can actually prescribe some supplements if needed, etc., and also customize the diet if needed. And this also comes with weekly meal plans. So, everybody wants meal plans. So that's a great way for people to stay on the diet.
Yes, and get inspired, because when you're just trying to figure this out, you don't want to make a mistake. You want to do it 100% perfect just to see if it works. I think that's super important. And I love the group coaching program, because like you said, you can feel so alone, and knowing that there are other people out there and hearing their success stories is so inspiring. And I think that just mentally helps you stick with it and keep going. So I'm so glad you have these programs, and you offered our guests or our listeners 10% off the programs by using the code ZORA, ZORA. So I'm super excited to have people somewhere to direct them, because actually I do run into people with these issues, and it's nice to know they can go to you. I'll have links to the programs and your Instagram, your YouTube, and your email in the show notes, where people can find more about you and just reach out to you. And I'm super grateful that you made the time to come out and explain so much and share your story. I find it super inspiring. Before we go, do you have any last words for a woman going through menopause?
Yes. Thank you for the opportunity, by the way, for having me here. My message to a woman who's going through menopause would be, you don't need to suffer. Don't think that these symptoms are normal. It's part of menopause, and that's the way you've got to live the rest of your life. Be definitely open to trying things like the dietary and lifestyle changes that I said, as well as, potentially exploring if HRT is right for you, because it can make a huge difference in the quality of your life, and you don't need to suffer.
That's wonderful. And pray.
Yes. And continue to pray in some form, whatever form helps you, because that is so good for both the mind as well as the body.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Indira. I am super excited to keep following you, and hopefully have you on again and continue the conversation, because I still have so many questions. So thank you for your time, and I hope you have a good day and a nice flight.
Thank you so much, Zora. It was a pleasure to be here. Thank you for the opportunity.